What if I told you that this ordinary-looking silver-colored coin from 1960 carries a story connected with one of the most famous designs in French numismatic history? Today on Old Coins Explorer, we're taking a detailed look at a 1960 French Franc Semeuse coin, and there is much more to this little piece than its simple appearance suggests. At first glance, many people may think this is just an old silver coin because of its color and age, but the important truth is that this particular issue is made of nickel, not silver. The coin belongs to the beginning of France's New Franc era, a major monetary change that started in 1960. The beautiful female figure on the front is known as La Semeuse, or the Sower, one of France's most recognizable coin designs. It was created by the celebrated French artist and engraver Oscar Roty, and the design itself goes back to the late 19th century. The 1960 issue brought this historic design back onto a modern circulating coin at a fascinating moment in French monetary history. The coin shown in our video is especially interesting because we can examine both sides closely and discuss its inscriptions, metal, weight, dimensions, mintage, symbolism, varieties, condition, and collector interest. So stay with me until the end, because I will also explain whether a 1961 franc coin like this is actually rare or valuable, and what details you should check before selling one. Identification and basic specifications. Let us begin with the basic identification, because this is the foundation of understanding any old coin. The coin in the photographs is a French Franc Semeuse dated 1960, from the period of the French Fifth Republic. Its denomination is 1 franc, and catalog references identify the regular nickel issue as F.226, with KM 925.1 also used in world coin catalogs. The standard coin has a diameter of approximately 24 millimeters, a weight of about 6 grams, and a thickness of roughly 1.8 millimeters. Its shape is round, and the edge is reeded or striated, meaning that you can see small parallel lines around the circumference. The regular circulating version is struck in nickel, which explains its bright gray or silver-like appearance without making it a silver coin. This distinction is extremely important for collectors because many people see an old European coin with a silvery color and immediately assume that it contains silver. In this case, that assumption would be incorrect. The regular 1960 issue was struck in enormous numbers, with a reported mintage of approximately 406,375,000 pieces, making it a common date rather than an automatically rare coin. The standard issue was struck in Paris, and specialist catalogs list the 1960 regular type as F.226/4. These specifications match the established numismatic references for the 1960 French Franc Semeuse, although an individual coin should always be weighed and measured if you want to confirm authenticity. The obverse and the famous Sower. Now let's turn to the most beautiful side of the coin, the obverse, where we see the famous Semeuse or Sower. The woman is shown walking toward the left while scattering seeds, with her clothing and hair appearing to move in the wind. She wears the Phrygian cap, an important symbol associated with liberty and the French Republic. Behind her we can see the rising sun, while the entire composition creates a strong feeling of movement and optimism. Around the upper portion of the coin are the words REPUBLIQUE FRANÇAISE, identifying the issuing nation as the French Republic. Near the lower part of the design is the signature O, Roty, identifying the artist responsible for the famous design. Oscar Roty Semeuse was not originally created specifically for this 1960 coin. Its history goes much further back. The Musée d'Orsay explains that Roty had developed the Semeuse concept from an earlier agricultural metal project and later transformed it into the dynamic Republican figure used on French money. The design first appeared on French silver coins in 1897 and 1898, decades before the 1960 nickel franc was produced. When France introduced the new franc, the historic Sower design was deliberately brought back to represent the idea of monetary stability and continuity. That makes this coin particularly interesting because its 1960 date is modern, but its central artistic design comes from a much older period of French history. The reverse, inscriptions, and symbols. The reverse of the coin is equally important and contains several details that collectors should learn to recognize. At the center we find the denomination written as 1 franc, clearly telling us the face value of the coin. Below the denomination is an olive branch, a traditional symbol of peace. Around the design appears the famous French Republican motto Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité, which translates into English as liberty, equality, fraternity. At the bottom is the date 1960, which is the key feature identifying this particular issue and year. There are also small mint and engraver marks associated with French coin production, and these tiny details can be very important when identifying varieties or specialist pieces. On the coins shown in your photographs, the heavy circulation and surface will make some of the smallest details difficult to read with absolute certainty, so I would not claim a rare variety solely from these photographs. The reverse design is another example of how French coins combine practical monetary information with national symbolism. The denomination tells you what the coin was worth, the year tells you when it was produced, the olive branch represents peace, and the national motto connects the coin directly to the ideals of the French Republic. This is one reason old coins are so fascinating. Even a small 1 franc piece can preserve political, artistic, and cultural ideas in metal. Why 1960 was a historically important year? The year 1960 is not an accidental date on this coin, because France was going through a major monetary transition at exactly this time. The country introduced the new franc, commonly called the nouveau franc, in 1960 as part of a broader effort to restore confidence and simplify the currency after years of inflation and monetary instability. The new unit was equal to 100 old francs, which is an extremely important fact for anyone researching French coins from this period. In other words, a 1961 franc new franc coin represented the equivalent of 100 of the previous old francs in nominal monetary conversion. The Monnaie de Paris explains that the new franc was introduced in 1960 and that the Sower was deliberately selected for the new franc because of its historic connection with French monetary tradition. The choice was symbolic. France was introducing a new monetary unit, while simultaneously bringing back an iconic image from an earlier era. This gives the 1961 franc coin a special historical position between old and new French currency. It belongs to the modern Fifth Republic, but its artistic identity reaches back to the Third Republic. The coin therefore represents both change and continuity at the same time. For collectors, this historical context is often more interesting than simply looking at the metal value. A coin can be common in quantity, but still be historically important, and the 1960 Semeuse is a good example of that principle. Mintage, rarity, and the important rare coin question. Now we come to the question that every viewer usually wants answered. Is this 1960 French 1 franc coin rare? The honest answer is that the standard 1960 issue is not rare simply because it is from 1960. Specialist references give the regular 1960 mintage as approximately 406,375,000 coins, which is a very large production figure. When hundreds of millions of examples are struck, an ordinary circulated specimen normally does not become extremely valuable just because it is more than 60 years old. However, this does not mean that every 1961 franc coin has exactly the same collector value. Condition is extremely important, and specialists also look for varieties, unusual mint characteristics, errors, exceptional strikes, and coins that retain much of their original mint appearance. Catalog information also records a 1960 variety involving the size of a zero, commonly described as a small zero or large zero variety, showing why collectors should inspect the date carefully. Your photographs clearly show a 1960 Semeuse coin, but because of the circulation wear and photographic angle, I would be cautious about declaring it to be a particular rare variety without a sharper macro examination of the date and relevant mint marks. This is an important lesson for coin collectors. A YouTube claim that says every 1960 coin is worth hundreds or thousands should not be accepted without evidence. Rarity must be established through the exact variety, condition, authenticity, and market demand, not simply through the year printed on the coin. Condition of the coin shown in the photographs. Looking specifically at the coin in your photographs, we can make some useful observations about its apparent condition. The coin has clearly experienced circulation because many of the highest points of the design show noticeable wear and the original sharpness is no longer present. The sewer's clothing, hair, facial details, and surrounding fields show a significant amount of surface abrasion. while the reverse also has softened details around the olive branch and lettering. There are numerous marks and scratches visible across the fields, and the coin does not appear to retain the brilliant original mint luster that would be expected from an uncirculated example. The edge also appears to have normal signs of handling rather than the pristine appearance of a freshly struck coin. Based on photographs alone, I would describe it generally as a circulated example, rather than assigning a precise professional grade. A proper grade would require examining the coin under controlled lighting and magnification, checking the high points, luster, scratches, cleaning, rim condition, and possible damage. It is also important not to clean the coin in an attempt to make it look brighter, because harsh cleaning can permanently reduce collector appeal. The coin's gray, worn appearance is completely consistent with an old nickel circulation piece that spent time in everyday use. If you want a professional valuation, the best approach is to have the coin weighed, measured, and examined alongside high-resolution photographs of both sides and the edge. From these images alone, there is no responsible basis for claiming that this particular circulated example is a high-value rarity. What makes the Semeuse design so special? One of the biggest reasons this coin deserves attention is not necessarily its metal value, but the extraordinary history of its design. Oscar Roty's Semeuse became one of the most recognizable images in French numismatics. The Musée d'Orsay notes that the original concept dates back to the late 19th century and that Roty transformed the figure into a more dynamic representation of the Republic. The woman is not simply standing still like a traditional portrait. She is walking, sowing seeds, and moving against the wind. The rising sun behind her adds another layer of symbolism, suggesting light, hope, and a new beginning. The Phrygian cap connects the figure with Republican ideals and liberty, while the act of sowing can be understood as an image of growth, prosperity, and ideas being planted for the future. The olive branch, on the reverse, reinforces the theme of peace. Together, the two sides create a complete symbolic message rather than merely decorating the coin. Interestingly, the design was so successful that the Semeuse was later used beyond coins, including French postage stamps, and the motif eventually became part of France's broader visual heritage. When you hold this 1960 coin, therefore, you are not simply holding 6 grams of nickel. You're holding a later chapter in the long life of one of France's most famous monetary designs. That artistic continuity is one of the strongest reasons collectors continue to find Semeuse coins fascinating. Final verdict, collector advice, and closing. So, what is the final verdict on this 1960 French Franc Semeuse nickel coin? First, it is an authentic-looking example of a historically important French circulating denomination, but photographs alone cannot provide absolute authentication. Second, the regular issue is made of nickel, weighs approximately 6 grams, measures about 24 millimeters, has a reeded edge, and belongs to the new Franc era that began in 1960. Third, the enormous mintage of roughly 406 million pieces means that the ordinary circulated example should not automatically be described as a rare or extremely valuable coin. Fourth, condition can make a major difference, especially when an example retains strong, original detail and mint luster. Fifth, collectors should carefully examine the date, particularly the reported small 0 and large 0 varieties, along with the tiny mint and engraver marks. Sixth, never clean the coin aggressively, because an attractive original surface can be more desirable than a bright but damaged surface. Seventh, if someone offers you a very high price for this coin, ask for evidence from recognized auction records or a reputable numismatic catalog rather than relying on sensational online claims. And finally, remember that the true beauty of this piece is its story. The 1960 New Franc, the famous Sower of Oscar Roty, the ideals of the French Republic, and the transition from old francs to a new monetary system are all preserved in this small nickel coin. If you enjoyed this detailed journey through French numismatic history, make sure to subscribe to Old Coins Explorer, because here we don't just look at old coins, we explore the history, mystery, and stories hidden inside them.